I feel like every year there's like 3 or 4 big headline-making affairs that make us all stop and start to look around and go, who else is having an affair? Well, in this time of our lives, we probably know at least one other couple who's been touched by an affair. So I've brought on Amanda Deverich, a licensed marriage and family therapist, author, and speaker whose work focuses on relationship rupture, betrayal, and repair, to talk with us about her book, Affair Repair, and help us to better understand why affairs occur, what we need to know about them, and can a couple actually repair after an affair. With her book, Affair Repair, Amanda meets readers in moments of relational crisis and helps them know what to do next, offering clear, steady guidance without judgment or sensationalism. She's a TEDx speaker and has contributed to the Huffington Post since 2011. Not only is she all those things, but Amanda Deverich is one of my best friends. We met back in our master's program, and funny enough, I was her mentor. From that moment on, we've been a big part of each other's lives, and she is someone I really watched develop her ability to support couples in these life-altering moments and actually repair after affairs. So who better to come and teach us what we need to know and what we can do? So go grab a warm drink and let's dive in. Welcome to Relationship Reset, a podcast for high-achieving couples who've been together for over a decade and don't want to feel like roommates anymore. I'm Katie Russler, relationship strategist and couples counselor with almost 20 years of experience helping ambitious couples reconnect, strengthen communication, and turn their relationship into the best part of their success story. This podcast is about using practical tools and a lot of real talk to help you understand your patterns, stop feeling stuck and discouraged, and start working on your relationship in ways that actually fit your busy life. Because your relationship shouldn't be the cost of your success, it should be the best part of it. So let's dive in. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're talking about a challenging topic, and yet it's ever present in today's society, affairs. And specifically, can we repair after an affair, and how so? I've brought Amanda Deverich to come and talk with us about her book, Affair Repair, and also helping us know the stages and the challenging phases we may experience as we try to repair after an affair. Amanda, thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Katie. I'm excited to be here. I can't wait to talk about this very painful, important topic that I've learned so much walking through the experience with so many couples. It's definitely a heart work for me, and I hope that maybe we can help some people, give them some ideas.
Definitely. Well, the interesting thing when you've got 2 trained marriage and family therapists, as you and I, we're going to say an exciting topic about affairs, and people are probably going to listen and go, wait, what? But please know that you and I, we tend to geek out on interesting topics in our field. And affairs have become even more prevalent in conversations as things are happening on social media, as people are being caught in public events. So it's a conversation we need to start having. Also, because with the rise of social media, there's been an increase in emotional affairs, sexual affairs, and also psychological affairs, the back and forth where you think you're in a relationship with someone and later you find out it's not actually that person. So let's just start from the beginning. Why do people have affairs, Amanda? And all the research you've been doing for your book and also in the clients you've worked with over the many, many years, what are you finding are the reasons people have affairs?
That is a great question, and I wish I could say there was one singular reason why people have affairs, and there really isn't. It's as idiosyncratic or unique to each individual. And certainly there's already lots of common sense out there. Don't get close to your coworker. You get your work husband, work wife, work spouse, work whatever, and you start emotionally sharing. I mean, some of these things are well known. Or sometimes you become drunk and you make a mistake. Or you find yourself deployed and you're in a trauma situation and you find yourself attached to somebody. Very rarely, I don't think I have actually met the person who specifically went out to have an affair to hurt somebody. I haven't met that person yet. I'm sure that exists. I'm sure revenge sex is a thing for sure. But truly, I have not yet met somebody who so deep in their heart only sought to do that. And I think there's another thing. I myself might say I would never have an affair. And I believe that most people, again, say I would never have an affair. But I would suggest that we have moral luck. And moral luck is just the idea you haven't met the perfect temptation. So humbly, I say, I don't know what would make you or anybody listening have an affair.
Yeah. As you're talking about that, I was just thinking, okay, what are the history of affairs? And frankly, I think there was a time where affairs occurred and you just were allowed to marry that person so that legally it was okay what you were doing, and men could have multiple wives to support that. But the reality is, we see it throughout history. Affairs have been happening since people have been around.
Adultery is one of the top 10 commandments for those who are Judeo Christian, right? It has been around for a very long time. And I think it makes the top 10 list because it's that painful.
Yeah, that's so true. Well, let's talk about, for those who are maybe listening and suspect their partner is having an affair, or they know for sure. Let's talk first about the conversations that need to happen in the beginning, in that first stage of when the affair has been either released and shared or found out.
Right? What you're talking about there is the moment of discovery, right? And that is the most shocking moment, but not yet the most painful.
Mm.
And in my work, I've broke out the path of affair repair, if you will, as 5 basic phases. And the first is normalcy. That's before the affair occurs. That's your life before you find out. And then discovery is the moment when it's proof positive. There might be sort of this gray zone where you're like, wow, they're late from work, or I noticed these funky texts, or they're being more distant. That's kind of a pre-discovery phase that will later affect how you repair because you're going to remember that, kind of knowing. But discovery, again, that's when you pick up the text and you see the texts, or you walk in and you catch them in the act, or there is a confession, right? That's the discovery phase. It's about, I kind of put this artificial framework of that's 0 to 14 days. It's when you're starting to get the information. It's not all of the information you will ultimately learn. Then comes the most difficult and or most painful phase, not the most difficult, but the most painful phase, and that's crisis. That's when it all starts to settle in, when you begin to realize what actually has happened and what it means. So if it were a car crash, discovery is the moment you hit the tree. Crisis is when you start to feel the pain.
Mm-hmm.
This is when people go into fight and flight or freeze mode. They're going into survival mode in the crisis phase. After crisis is affair PTS for the person who was betrayed. Because your body cannot sustain that level of vigilance that is in crisis, the body begins to relax. But then it pops back up and it's back on alert. And then it relaxes. And then it pops back up and it's on alert. And what this looks like is, okay, we've already talked about we have the affair. Okay, we're going to figure out what we're going to do. And now I just can't get it out of my mind. Were they with them at this time? Well, they said here, where were they? Or they're 5 minutes late from them, probably. Or just you're randomly doing the dishes and you're wondering, what was your partner thinking at that time? The thoughts keep coming up. And I use the term PTS to come alongside post-traumatic stress syndrome because that's what it is. It's uncontrollable thoughts and activation of your fight-flight system. So it's distressing. Concurrently, or at the same time that the person was betrayed that is going through the affair PTS, that other person is going through affair limerence or affair disenfranchised grief. And affair limerence is this similarly uncontrollable thoughts. You're thinking about the affair partner, you're thinking about what's happening with them, you're missing the good times of it, you're missing the fun of it. And I know this is very, very hard for the person who was betrayed to hear because justifiably we want to think, you're going to end the affair and we're going to come back together and we're going to work to make this right. That's sort of the hallmark black and white justice of this. And certainly if that's the right thing for you, I'm going to help you get to that goal if I can, or if couples can find their way, we'll try. But we have to be realistic that because the affair was discovered does not mean that it automatically ends.
Right. Very true.
Certainly current counseling suggests you should end the affair so you can work on your relationship. And I think that is the best course of action because then you can decide if you want to keep that relationship or not. But the reality is that doesn't always happen.
Mm-hmm. I've worked with couples where they have outwardly shared, they're staying because they need to know, they need to trust that this relationship, their, nest, their home is actually going to improve.
I love that you brought that up. To normalize it so that all the people who are listening, that it is not uncommon for a couple to work through an affair while the affair partner is still in the picture. Very, very difficult And by the way, when I say it's still in the picture, that doesn't mean that the person who's betrayed is okay with it, right? That because they most often they're not, right? But they're fighting for their marriage or they're trying to figure out what they want as well. So I love that you brought that up because it's very much a gray area. And I find in my work, there are 4 basic categories, if you will, of betrayers or people who have had an affair. One is the immediate regretful. They immediately regret what they've done. The second is the uncertain, right? I'm not sure if I want to stay in my marriage. Maybe I do, maybe I don't. Then there's the doubtful. I don't think I want to stay in my marriage. I don't think this can work out. It can't be better, right? We've already made the painful break. Let's finish. And then there's the person who is forced, who is being forced into counseling or forced into trying to save the marriage for whatever reason. And I will tell you that the flat out, the forced never comes to therapy or does once or twice and is ultimately out. The regretful, which is the one we Americans at least imagine that's what immediately we would all do, is rare.
Yeah.
Frankly, is rare. The uncertain and the doubtful is much more common. And I really feel that current literature, though I think most therapists are very patient and thoughtful, but the current literature out there doesn't really address that uncertain or doubtful space together. There's lots of books to help somebody who's involved in an affair figure themselves out. Not lots, there are a few, right? And then there are many that are willing to push the couple into a certain mold. I'm trying to offer a space where there can be a concurrent dialogue in the book that I'm at.
So I like that you brought up the uncertain and the doubtful, because if we talk about why someone had an affair, let's say it's a situation where they feel like more like roommates, right? And they feel like their partner doesn't pay attention to them. And all of a sudden there's someone who does pay attention to them, makes them feel good. And, there's just sort of that connection with someone. And whether it's an emotional or physical affair, it happens. And then it's like, okay, it's been found out, but I really want to go back to how it was before with my partner. Will it actually change? Will they pay attention to me more than a month or 2 to let me know it's okay? Or do I stay with this person who made me feel special and important? Another piece that can come with uncertain and doubtful is if the individual has addiction to sex and their needs, right? And so then it's like, I don't know if I can change. I don't know if I want to change. Why should I have to change? You don't want to do the things sexually that I want to do. And so you have that kind of piece. So it's so true that that is more common. And there's a lot of nuances of why they're uncertain or why they're doubtful that we do need to normalize.
100%. And I like where you pointed out that will my needs be met? And you mentioned addiction. Sometimes it's addiction, and sometimes it's just the sex actually was better, or the sex was unfulfilling in the current partnership. So the second half of my book is about marriage transformation. We're focusing here right now, and we should finish on affair repair. But sometimes people need to work a little bit on transformation while they're working on an affair to give hope. Just for the exact reason you said. It's like, I do feel bad. I want to repair the hurt, but I don't know if I want to be in this relationship because we're not sexually compatible, right? We need to work on that concurrently.
Well, walk us through marriage transformation, because it sounds like that's about how do we connect amidst the aftermath.
So ideally, you would complete the affair repair process and have established some bit of trust to know that we're now working on transformation. And I envision marriage transformation in 5 basic areas. The first one is reliability, desirability, because having a reliable marriage is not necessarily something that is desirable, right? Okay, it's safe. You're not going to cheat anymore, but we're not having fun. We're not fulfilling. We're not enjoying it, right? So reliable, desirable, sexuality, transformation of sexuality. All relationships, or 99%, are going to have a desire gap. One person is going to want more than the other. How do we address that desire gap, and how do we express our sexuality? So you're going to need to know, what desire level do I have? How can I adjust that to be mutually satisfying? And then the sexuality is the expression of that desire. So how do we express it? What dialogues do we need to have? How can we make that safe? How can we make that, again, mutually fulfilling? And honesty and truth undergirds all of this. It definitely undergirds the affair repair. It also undergirds a marriage transformation. Being able to be honest with each other, to tolerate that honesty, to work together with trust is a key piece. And then, so I said, we've got reliability, desirability, sexuality, anti-fragility, which is the idea that now that we have mastered all of this and weathered all of this journey together, we have the tools and we know that we can face whatever problem comes before us.
Beautiful. I'm so glad you mentioned sexuality in marriage transformation, not just because of desire levels, but you've probably seen this too, that in the beginning stages actually of the healing process, a couple can start having sex again, which that
Yes.
can trigger a bunch of stuff, but there's just this like kind of sexual awakening that can occur that in two parts can help and can also hurt. So the fact that that's in the book, that addressing sexuality and marriage transformation, I think is so important too, because most couples don't realize when we're in grief, let's say you have a loss, there can be also this increase in sexual desires because I want to feel something different than the sadness and anger that I have. And there's
Yes.
something about that sense of unity in sex or anger sex, all these different things where it can turn into, which can sometimes hurt the person more than help.
Yes.
But it is very human to have that desire.
I'm glad you mentioned that. And we call it hyper healing when you have that hypersexuality after the discovery. It's part of coming back together, feeling connected. And I think you make a good point there that sometimes that could be more hurtful. So we should be mindful. I would support any connection that was mutually consensual.
Yes.
And then you can go close and then go, you know what, now I need to take a breather here and figure out where I really am.
I can imagine the whole process is very much a dance for a couple. What would you say is the most challenging stage for the couples that you've worked with?
I would say crisis is the most painful. That's when you really go into fight or flight. I would say affair PTS or disenfranchised grief is almost the most crazy making because you can't get control of your mind. But the real hard work comes in affair repair.
Yeah.
And that's the longest phase. And that's when you are having conversations within the window of tolerance, which means you can think and feel at the same time. You can say hard truths, which is very hard for the person who is involved in the affair because they have to say some very hard things that are hurtful and shameful, right? But to be brave enough to say them, so important. And then for other person to be able to hear it without going into fight or flight mode, right? And to be able to receive any repair that might be offered and still keep themselves safe while they dialogue. That phase right there, having those conversations is where you begin to experience a new person because you can feel whether they're telling the truth. You can vet whether they're telling the truth. You can tolerate it within your body. So you're establishing a new sense of safety. And that's when you move into the last phase of affair repair, which is establishing trust.
What's very interesting about what you just said was that our ability to have those really hard conversations within that window of tolerance where our nervous system can tolerate what's being said, what we're feeling, what we're thinking, what we believe. For some couples, it's the first time they're ever having conversations like this. These aren't the types of conversations. When I work with a couple, it sometimes surprises me that they've not had some of the most difficult and challenging conversations that every couple should have because they never were taught how to do that effectively. No one modeled it for them. No one explained these are types of conversations you'll need to have when you pair up with someone, whether it be marriage or a long-term commitment. And if an affair is the starting off point of now we get to finally have those conversations, I can imagine it's a growing process. It is a beautiful reason to have a book like yours or to have a guide there with you through the beginning of learning those tools.
You're exactly right. As you said, it takes them to a new level. And this is the hard that not everyone gets here and not everyone can get here, but couples that other therapists would say this as well, that the people who have overcome an affair say affair was the best thing that happened to us because it transformed us, right? An affair is a transformative event. It completely changes your worldview. What you thought was true and safe, you could always rely on that partner. They were always there for us. Suddenly, they weren't. The world is completely different, and it changes in ways you cannot anticipate. And if a couple does what you just articulated, right, we're having conversations we never had before, right?
Yeah.
We've become something new, not that we wanted to, right? It's a transformative event. You're never going to be who you were before.
Right.
but you're something new. And if you do it well, and that's what why I wrote the book, if you can do it well, you can transform. You can.
Definitely. I think often when we partner up with someone, there's unspoken contracts that we go into, right? Like, I'm going to be this way and I'm going to be this type of wife. You're going to be this type of husband. All of these sort of contracts. I'll be more agreeable. You'll be the one who takes the lead. And when the affair happens or any crisis, it puts a big wall that will not move in the way and says, you will no longer go this way. You can't.
That's right. That's right.
And those conversations are the starting off point as well to let's break those contracts and let's actually speak the ones out loud we want to have and share the expectations that we've been hiding but have been holding each other to.
Right. And that's in the transformation phase when we now can do that. We're going to make explicit what is implicit. But it links back to when you said we had these unwritten contracts. So in the book, the very first phase is normalcy, which we briefly talked about. We need to reflect on what were our unwritten rules. How did we handle conflict? Because that is going to affect how you work through affair repair. Heightening your awareness of, oh, I was always the withdrawer, you were always the pursuer, or the way anger was held, or these were the things we never said to each other. Being aware of those old patterns influence how you transform. And if you have any pre-existing trauma or addictions, those also weave into it. It's a complicated process, but a doable process and absolutely worth doing.
With the couples that you've worked with over the years, have you noticed a trend in those who had family members have affairs, whether it be their own parents or it was just a normal thing in the family, older generations? Oh, yeah, Uncle so-and-so had an affair. Do you notice any of those tendencies where we hear, like, if you come from a family where affairs were normal, you're more than likely to marry someone who's going to have an affair or you're going to have an affair too? Are those patterns real?
I would not say reliably so, but when they pop up, they can be informative. And two stories are coming to my mind right now. Well, first, I want to debunk once a cheat, not always a cheat. I have worked with people who we've overcome it twice, and they have completely transformed. And it's a miracle story in my book. You can have one of two things. You can have a reaction formation. My family, all affairs, there will never be an affair on my watch.
Right. The hyper-vigilant, it will not happen. And then it does. And you're like, how? How did I not see it? Right.
Exactly. That is in the book. And it's devastating, right? The person who cheated was devastated. They suffered a moral injury. They were who they never wanted to be. Because they didn't have the skills to have the conversation they needed to have in their relationship. And the affair was what transformed it.
Right.
Not that I would wish that on anybody. An affair is an extremely painful experience. But again, it can be transformed.
Something that I really value in you and in the book that you wrote is the empathy for both partners. Often when we see books on affair, it's very much, the person who was betrayed has all the empathy and the person who is the betrayer is the one that we're angry at and shame and guilt and put them in their place. But the truth is they're both human beings and they're both at fault in different ways. And people don't like to hear that. I understand when I work with couples and there's maybe a sense of some form of emotional or physical affair that has happened. And whether it's come out or not, there's always this feeling of why are you empathetic towards them? Or why does that person get everything good happens to them and I'm the one suffering and struggling? And being able to understand that you can have empathy for both partners.
I think some of it, I appreciate it because I really did work very hard to illuminate, support, and interweave the path of the person who is involved in the affair, right? To really provide insight into what is happening. And I did it really for the benefit of the person who was hurt by the affair, because most people who are betrayed want their life back.
Yes.
They want their self-worth back. They want to feel loved. And in order to get that, we really have to understand what the other person is going through. And I do think timing is everything. I don't think you can come at the person who was betrayed and say, well, you know what, if you'd had sex a little bit more, or if you hadn't been so snippy, or if you hadn't been at work 24/7, maybe your spouse wouldn't have found somebody else, right? That can't really come and be heard for a while down the road. Yeah. Not until they feel safe again, because frankly, they were the ones that were injured. We need to understand why. so they can feel safe again. And that's a big part of what I really encourage in the book for the person who had the affair to do a lot of self-reflection so that when the questions come, why did you do this? You have honest answers, right? And the person who's betrayed can believe honest answers.
Right.
They might not like them,
Right.
but truth is really the foundation of any healing. Providing support for both partners, understanding what you're dealing with in any given moment. In the beginning of the process, the affair PTS is so intense. The anger, the crazy thoughts, the why are you 2 seconds late? Where were you on, Wednesday 4 years ago, right? These questions that keep coming. Understanding that you're dealing with a crisis response, somebody's survival response, hopefully can give patience to, I will answer that question for the 1,755th time.
Yeah.
Right? We're dealing with that fight or flight response. We're not dealing with logic at that moment. So the faster we can learn how to work together, and for the person who was hurt to also go, okay, I know this is a fair PTS. Let me do some work to kind of mitigate this. It's a dance. It's a dance that is unique to each one. So
Yeah, definitely. When you wrote your book, who were you thinking of as far as who this method and this book specifically would support? Is there a type of person this book is really for or who it would really help?
that I write about a few stories that are particularly seminal and inspirational to me, but really it's every single one of the people who come and work with me.
Hmm.
I'm so grateful. Everyone is so unique. Everyone has so much on the line. Their selfhood, their partnership, their relationship, their discernment of what do I want to do with the rest of my life? Do I want to stay in this? Do I need to break it now? It's so impactful, each one. So I wrote it honestly for every single one,
I love that.
trying to address all of the various aspects. And
Yeah.
there is a pattern. I guess that's what I wanted to also say is because there are so many different types, but there is a pattern. There is a pattern. And I will say, you maybe want to edit this, maybe not. I got recently stuck with a couple and they were so high functioning, right? We just discovered the affair and I know he is regretful and I don't think he's cheating anymore. So we've had some pretty good days. And I thought to myself, really, she should be in affair PTS right now. And I said, I'm wondering if you have any intrusive thoughts and spend all day wondering various things. And she said, yes. So I realized, okay, that the pathway is still consistently that. Though she was able to handle it, though she wanted to repair her marriage, she was still suffering with the PTS thoughts. And he didn't realize it. So I was able to coach them like, don't be afraid of it. Broach it, say it, address it, heal it, reconnect so that you're both not walking through, she's sucking it up and you're thinking everything is fine. And then 1 month later, there's a big blowout and you have no idea why.
Yes. So it sounds like this book is for anyone or any couple who are ready and willing to do the work because you're giving them a framework and a vocabulary to talk together jointly about what they're feeling, what they're thinking, the experience that they're both having in different ways. And so it isn't specific for a certain type of couple, but just really the couple that says, okay, we need support. And maybe they're not really comfortable going to a therapist and sharing some of this. Maybe they feel because of their culture, their family background, whatever it might be, they want to see if this is something they can work on themselves. Your book is really giving them the framework you would have worked with them in therapy.
100%. And I wrote it so that it would be very easy to use as sort of I'm in this phase, or these are the things I'm experiencing. I'm the person who had the affair. I'm the person hurt by the affair. What do I need to do? What am I going through right now? How does that interact with what my partner is going through? Where are we going to go together? So I really tried to make it a how-to, a step-by-step at where I am at now without forcing any one particular prescription onto any couple.
I love
don't know
that.
what will happen, but I know what to do.
I think something I value about your book is it's like you said, it isn't you must follow this chapter to this chapter to this chapter. It is, you might jump ahead. You might find you're in this stage or phase and you're going to go here and then you want to jump ahead to this. You can do that. You have the power and control, but as long as you're doing it together.
100%. Or if you, like a fair PTS is early on, but it can happen later. But now you know what it is. Right. So, we go back to this chapter. This is what we do. But we need a little marriage transformation. Let's talk about desirability. Let's look ahead at that chapter. What is it suggesting there? right? So you can use it that way. You can use
Love
it.
that. Amanda, if people want to connect with you, learn more from you, buy the book, give us this information.
The fastest way to find me is affairrepair.com. That's the title of the book, affairrepair.com. You can find all the information there. You can find how to reach me directly. You can find how to get the book, and I sure hope to help as many people as possible. Thank you, Katie.
Excellent. So this link, as easy as it is, great job, Amanda. It will be in the show notes below, as well as how to connect with Amanda on LinkedIn in case you want to reach to her specifically, asking questions about her book before you go and buy it. But I agree, this is a book for those who just want to get support and to know they're not alone. The stories you have in it are really hopeful as well as very honest. Not every couple makes it. You're able to acknowledge that. And I think that's really beautiful about what we can learn from you, Amanda. And not only the empathy you can have for both partners, but also the education you can give us about ourselves on our path to being able to repair after an affair. So thank you so much for writing the book, and thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing it with us.
Thank you, Katie. You've been an incredible part of the whole process, and it's been wonderful to be here.
And dear listener, we'll see you next week. Before you go, I want to leave you with this. The effort you put into your relationship is one of the most important investments you'll ever make. How you communicate and grow together shapes your home, your leadership, and the example you set for the people around you. Relationship work is truly legacy work, and it quietly impacts more lives than we often realize. If this episode resonated, consider sharing it with someone you care about, a partner, a friend, or another couple who's building a full life and want their relationship to be the best part of it too. And if you're enjoying these conversations, make sure to follow or subscribe to Relationship Reset. Leaving a rating or review also helps this message reach more couples who are ready to grow with intention. I'll see you next week.